The movie begins on December 31st, 2011. A young man named Young Ho is sitting alone in a park with a troubled expression. This is because he has been waiting for a woman for several years, but has never had the chance to meet her in real life. Despite this, he keeps searching for her and visiting the park, hoping that one day the love of his life will show up. The story then takes us back 8 years when Young Ho is struggling with a tough college entrance exam. He isn't very good at academics, so he keeps failing to get into college and has to retake the exam every year. After the exam, Young Ho decides to have lunch in the park. While he's eating alone, a bold and beautiful girl named Soo Jin comes up to him and starts eating. Even though they don't know each other, Soo Jin bravely starts a conversation with Young Ho. He's surprised by how beautiful she is, and it leaves him speechless. She understands Young Ho's struggle because she's been rejected by colleges too. She also mentions that she sees him quite often during the tests. Unsure of how to respond, Young Ho eventually decides to leave and go home. But to his surprise, Soo Jin follows him and keeps talking. As their conversation comes to an end, Young Ho, who has been quiet all along, manages to just say one word: goodbye. He is left curious and fascinated by their encounter as they part ways. Following this, Young Ho arrives home and meets his family. It turns out there's a contrasting difference between Young Ho and his brother Lee. The latter is smart, good-looking, and has money. Unfortunately, he often belittles Young Ho, calling him useless and accusing him of spending his family's income. At night, Lee finds out that Young Ho didn't pass the college test, and it leads to a lot of insults. He calls Young Ho lazy, stupid, and a burden to their father. These mean words cut deeply, so he goes to his room and contemplates his situation. After a while of thinking, Young Ho becomes determined to study hard and secure a place in college. So he confidently opens his books and dives into a set of challenging questions. However, when the latter reviews his answers, he finds that all of them are wrong. It is at this moment that Young Ho realizes the harsh reality. People are often labeled stupid based on their intelligence rather than their personalities. While considering himself useless, Young Ho vividly remembers taking part in his school's relay race competition. That day, he had fallen to the ground while running and got injured. Everyone else laughed at him, but So-yeon, a kind girl, came to his aid and offered him a handkerchief to clean himself. Regrettably, our boy doesn't speak and just accepts the handkerchief. He never had the chance to express his gratitude or return the handkerchief. Since then, So-yeon has held a special place in his heart, as she is the only person who showed him compassion when others ridiculed him for his perceived lack of intelligence. Motivated by this memory, Young Ho decides to reconnect with his elementary school friend, Jong-gu, whose mother was the vice principal of their school. And after a few anxious days, he finally acquires So-yeon's address. Young Ho gets so emotional that he pours his heart out in a letter, referring to her as his first love. The next day, Young Ho helps his father at work. He is feeling very frustrated because he has been studying hard to pass the college entrance test, but he has still not succeeded. He finally asks his father which is more important for learning, talent or effort. The latter tells him that both things are important, but it's more important to enjoy what he learns because there are always difficulties in learning something new. This makes Young Ho think whether he really wants to go to college or if it's just because society expects it. Elsewhere, we see So-hee, a lovely girl who also happens to be So-yeon's sister. As she visits So-yeon's school to collect her belongings, she comes across a letter. From it, we shockingly learn that So-yeon is suffering from paralysis throughout her body. She is unable to speak and can only respond to certain questions using a bell. After a few days, Young Ho unexpectedly receives a letter from So-yeon, making him happy. As he reads through it, he learns that she wants to keep exchanging letters with him, but with some conditions. So-yeon never wants to meet in person, no matter what happens. Even though it's a bit sad, Young Ho is still happy because he has kept his love for So-yeon silent for so long. He believes that just by exchanging letters, he can finally express his feelings. The next day, Young Ho writes a letter and sends it with a stuffed dog attached to it. Soon, So-hee receives it and reads it to her sister. Though paralyzed, So-yeon interacts with the letter and wonders how someone can love her so much. So-hee is also touched by the love and writes a return letter in So-yeon's name. In the next scene, while Young Ho is reading the letter, he is suddenly visited by Soo-jin, the girl from the park. She sees him reading the letter happily and concludes that it must be from a girl. Soo-jin realizes that Young Ho has fallen in love with someone, but instead of discussing the contents of the letter, she talks about the clouds. Although it may seem meaningless, Soo-jin is trying to show that she is interested in Young Ho, while silently harboring jealousy of the woman who has sent the letter. A few days later, Soo-jin comes to Young Ho again. They go out at night and she shares a lot about her past, telling him about her late brother. Soo-jin asks Young Ho if he wants to stay with her for one night because she still wants to spend more time with him. The latter is a bit skeptical, but he agrees, perhaps because he feels sorry for her. They quickly find a room to rent and settle in. During their time together, Soo-jin opens up about her past, revealing that her mother passed away and her father has remarried. Despite her daily smile, Soo-jin carries deep inner suffering. She confesses to Young-ho that she feels a sense of comfort with him, as they both appear sad, even when they're laughing. Unaware of Soo-jin's true feelings for him, Young-ho continues to exchange letters with So-yeon, growing more connected with each passing day. Although they haven't met in person, their mutual interest in one another becomes evident. Soo-jin, on the other hand, asks Young-ho to hang out and suggests a trip to the beach. When asked why she wants to be with him so much, she replies that she likes him because he's a sincere person. One day, armed with the address she got from the letters, So-yeon decides to visit the place where Young-ho's father works. Unfortunately, their timing doesn't align, as he attempts to meet her on the same day. In the next letter, So-yeon sends Young-ho a silhouette photo. Although it only captures her silhouette without revealing her entire face, Young-ho is filled with immense joy. The following day, he is seen on the building's rooftop with Soo-jin. After a bit of chatting, he reveals his decision to skip the college entrance test this year. Soo-jin is taken aback by this news, expressing her surprise. In response, Young-ho explains that he doubts his ability to pass the exam. He also doesn't want to waste time on something he isn't interested in. As days go by, Young-ho's love for So-yeon continues to deepen. Not able to hold his emotions anymore, he writes a letter asking to meet her on December 31st. To his delight, she agrees right away. However, So-yeon sets a condition that it must rain on that day, or they'll have to wait for another year to reunite. Upon learning of this condition, Young-ho becomes upset and frustrated, knowing how slim the chances are for rain on December 31st. Sadly, a few weeks later, So-yeon loses the battle with her illness and passes away, holding a crafted boat Young-ho had given her. So he is devastated by her sister's death, but feels powerless to change the situation. She musters the strength to write a final letter to Young-ho, informing him about So-yeon's passing. However, she struggles to write the words, knowing the pain it will bring him. Meanwhile, Young-ho discovers a new passion in his life, becoming an entrepreneur. Motivated by this, he decides to travel to Japan and learn about trade. Prior to his departure, Young-ho bids farewell to Soo-jin, sharing his plans for an extended stay in Japan. He also mentions the fact that they may not see each other for a long time. Realizing that it might be their last meeting, Soo-jin gathers some courage and asks Young-ho why he can't love her. With a calm demeanor, he replies that he likes someone else. Hearing this, poor Soo-jin realizes that she can't force Young-ho to love her, and finally accepts the reality that the relationship may only ever be confined to a friendship. That night, Young-ho heads to Japan to fulfill his dreams and ambitions. Years pass and he gains a lot of knowledge in the trade sector. He also establishes a large umbrella manufacturing business. One day, Soo-jin pays a surprise visit to Young-ho's bustling umbrella shop. She is taken aback by the remarkable transformation in him since their last encounter. To her delight, Young-ho even presents her with a special umbrella which he created specifically for her, indicating that he has never forgotten her. As Soo-jin eagerly opens the umbrella, her eyes well with tears. The umbrella is decorated with stars, something which they both love. At this moment, Soo-jin realizes she had fallen in love with him for the wrong reasons, and in doing so, overlooked Young-ho's genuine goodness. Now aware of her misjudgment, all Soo-jin can do is offer her prayers, wishing for Young-ho to be reunited with his first love. Deep within her heart, she believes that certain bonds are destined to be cherished without possession. The scene then shifts back a few years earlier, where Young-ho is seen waiting for Soo-yeon on December 31st. She doesn't show up that day, but Young-ho doesn't give up. He arrives at the same park every year, hoping that he can catch a glimpse of her. However, fortune doesn't favor him, as it never rains. As time passes, it finally starts to dawn on Young-ho that he may never see the love of his life. On the other hand, we see a dejected So-hee visiting her sister's grave. She is filled with regret for not informing Young-ho about everything. However, deep in her heart, she holds a wish for rain to fall on December 31st so that she can finally gather the courage to meet Young-ho. Elsewhere, Young-ho finally discovers that So-yeon passed away due to severe illness 8 years ago. The revelation shatters his heart and he struggles to focus on his work. But despite the painful reality, Young-ho clings to the hope that So-yeon might still be alive. With December 31st approaching, he decides to fulfill his promise one last time and wait at the park as planned. Miraculously, on that significant day, the rain finally pours down, seemingly in tune with So-yeon's words. The film ends with a surprising revelation that takes us back to the days of Young-ho and So-hee's elementary school years. It's revealed that So-hee is the one who extended the handkerchief to Young-ho when he got hurt. He read her name from her badge, but in reality, it was So-hee who was wearing her sister's dress.